Okay, Beshem Hashem Naseh V'Nasliach. Thank you so much, Rabbi Nat, for giving me this opportunity. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to see halachically what is the preference today. Is Yibbun is the halachic preference, or Chalitzah? So Baruch Hashem, we started this part of Orayta program as a Seder Nashim Masechet Yevamot. So as we learned in Devarim, Perek Chaf Hey, Pasuk Hey, that the Pasuk says, Ki Yeshu Achim, if two brothers are living together, Rashi explains that they are both alive, and then Umet Echad Behem, and one of them dies, Uben Enlo, and he doesn't have a descendants, as explained in Masechet Yevamot, no children. Lo ye eshet hamet hachusa leish zar. The wife, the widow, cannot just get married to a stranger. Yevama yavo aleha velacha lo leisha ve'mah. Rather, the Yevama should come, the brother-in-law should come and get married with her. So this way, she should not just get married to anyone. So this is the makor in Torah Kedusha speaking about this mitzvah of Yibbun, and when the Yibbun is not possible, Chalitzah. So we wanna examine what is the what are the preference among the poskim. So so before we get to that, Zohar HaKadosh explains in Parashat Chukat, page 180a. This is also brought in the end of the Orayta booklets, the Halacha discussion of Chalitzah as a mitzvah or matir. So Zohar HaKadosh explains that Yibbun and Chalitzah both provide a tremendous tikkun, spiritual benefit for the neshama of the deceased brother, right? That this way the neshama can be released, whether through Yibbun or Chalitzah, or the neshama can have a continuity. Some people who do the Yibbun, especially among Sfadim, they name the child after the deceased brother, so that the child is continuing that neshama of the deceased brother. So we see that Zohar HaKadosh explains, and based on this, Beis Shemuel seems to understand, and according to Zohar HaKadosh, Chalitzah is a mitzvah when it's not done, when Yibbun is not done. And because of this, Zohar HaKadosh, Rav Chaim Pelagi, one of the big Sephardi poskim, he explains that, one must perform Chalitzah even if the widow, is not interested to get Chalitzah, or is not up to marriage. The case of a very old man or a woman, right? Can they just say, okay, forget about it, no Chalitzah, no Yibbun? No, there is no such a thing. According to Pelei Yoetz, she must go for Chalitzah. Rav Eliezer Papo, the Baal Pelei Yoetz, Rav Eliezer Papo Zal, he explains, he brings a story of a Yavam and a Yavama who didn't perform Chalitzah, and Rahmanan Listan, the Yavam lost all his children. So this is not just a, this is not simple. Khatam Sofer Zal brings that Zohar is not really coming here to pass in the halacha, and that we should based on the Zohar, we should force the Yavam or Yevama to act. So he says, even if the Zohar would say such a thing, right, the halacha would follow Shas. That halacha follows Shas, which maintains that we do not force them unless Yavama comes with a taina. So that's what Khatam Sofer says. Now, the Radbaz writes, in such a case, where there is a machloket poskim, what to do, right, and how to understand the Gemara, we rely on Zohar. That's what Radbat says. We rely on the Zohar to be machmir, right? So based on this, Bet Yosef and Mishnah Berura also they mention this Radvaz, and Harav Ovadia Yosef Alav Shalom holds that halacha in this case is based on Zohar. Now, so we're gonna go to other opinions soon.
This is the case where they're both old. Is that the issue? They're both too old for you.
That's one of the cases where they don't know. They don't know exactly what to do when it's not, obviously they cannot get married, when one of them wants to just let it go, right? So there is even discussion of forcing to do Chalitzah. Okay, so
no, I also, my friend, there's also some cases that the Batei Dinim, like in Iran, my friend told me they didn't know how to do it, so they had to send his wife's grandmother from Shiraz to Esfahan, because they didn't know how to do Chalitzah. Chalitzah.
The question here is whether or not you have to do the Chalitzah, you could just choose not to.
Yeah.
And if she's too old, she doesn't want to get remarried anyway.
Yeah.
That's the shiloh.
Yeah, so based on this, you cannot just say, yes, obviously you cannot just say, forget about it. No, they have to choose either Yibbun or Chalitzah. Okay, so
is Chalitzah mitzvah chiyuvis?
Yes. Now there's 2 pages you can look at end of the Orayta booklets. It goes to this is just a mitzvah or a matir, right? So matir, in other words, if a person wants to have meat, right, he needs to find a shochet to make shechita, right? Is there a mitzvah to go and have meat in order to make shechita, or is it a mitzvah to go and get married in order to get get, in order to do the mitzvah of get, right? So obviously the answer is no. So huh?
If they miss to get divorced, they can't come to the shosei.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on with the opinions of the Poschim. Harambam teaches us that Yibbun is the primary mitzvah. Harambam teaches us that Yibbun is the primary mitzvah. The lashon that Harambam brings is that mitzvat aseh min haTorah sheyivam adam eshet achiv. So he says it's a mitzvah aseh, and then he explains, right? He explains that if Yibbun is not possible, then Chalitzah comes secondary. Now he goes on to say, min haTorah eino sarich leqaddesh yibamto shezu ishto hi shehitqenu lo min hashamayim. That this is a wife that is set aside for brother-in-law from Shamayim. So that's the lashon of Harambam. Now Tur explains that really there is a machloket rishonim, and Tur holds he's poro Yibbun. According to Tur, he says Yibbun comes first, but he also understands that there are cases that Yibbun cannot be done, so Chalitzah obviously is the second option. Now, Halacha in Shulchan Aruch brings, Rav Yosef Karo Zal brings that Yibbun is the preference, and the lashon of Shulchan Aruch is mitzvah Yibbun qodemet lemitzvat Chalitzah. Ve'im eina roseh leit'abem leshum echad ma'achim. Then he says, there is the option of Chalitzah. However, Rama explains that really for the minhag of Ashkenazic communities is to have Chalitzah. And that's what Rama favors over the Yibbun, because perhaps there has to be the kavanah right, many details. Harambam explains many details of how Yibbun needs to be done. Chalitzah is a lot of details. I didn't go through all the details. Right? Now, according to Aruch HaShulchan,
what's the interplay with the decree from Rabbi Gershon that you can't have a second wife, and you have the situation of Yibbun? How does it play in here? Is that not like a real wife compared to
That's a good shaila. I didn't look into that. I don't know. So I guess no, we do. We didn't. We Sephardim do not. Yes, Sephardim do not follow that. Sephardim do not follow that opinion. Yeah, but practical speaking, Sephardim do not these days get married to a second wife. Yeah, one is already too much. Okay.
There's somebody, very prominent member of our community. He's a son of a Yibbun, married.
He's a rabbi. He's a rabbi. I was told. Yeah. Okay. According to Aruch HaShulchan, he is poro. He says Chalitzah. He explains that according to Acharonim and the minhag of most Batei Dinim, Chalitzah comes first. It's much easier to do Chalitzah than go for Yibbun. There is less complications. There is less issues with that. Arab Moshe Feinstein.
What complications?
No, Yibbun. Yibbun. The Kavanah.
That's not complications. It's a shaila, whatever. Not complications. Not
It's actually quite simple.
You make it sound like this. You have to do it in a certain way. I mean.
Yeah, maybe.
But you're finished.
Yeah, Yibbun. Okay. Yeah. According to Rab Moshe Feinstein, Alav Shalom, he says that one should go for Chalitzah. He emphasizes Chalitzah. That is the normal solution in these cases, and is brought in Igarot Moshe. Now, Harav Yosef Shalom Eliashiv, Zeches HaLivracha, he also holds of Chalitzah, right? And he said he did not promote Yibbun. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zeches HaLivracha, he also follows other Ashkenazic opinions of following Chalitzah.
Are they constantly force-started?
Huh?
Well,
Sephardim usually go to their Sephardi poskim. But obviously, if there is a Sephardi who goes to Ashkenazi posek to ask Shaila, that's what he's going to follow. Right. I mean, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. These are all the words of Hashem, keeping shalom. Right. Now, no, I mean it. That's true. Okay, so let's go on. I'm sorry, the time is limited, so I need. Now, according to Harav Shmuel Kamnitsky Shalita, right? Harav Shmuel Kamnitsky Shalita, he holds that Chalitzah should be preference. However, he says in exceptional cases, Yibbun can be allowed. I didn't see this myself inside, but that's what I found in my research. Now, Harav Ovadia Yosef Zeches HaLivracha, he explains, he brings in Yabiam Omer and Yechaveh Da'at, in She'elot Teshuvot, he dealt with this a lot. And he followed the opinion of Zohar and Shulchan Aruch and Rambam and other prominent poskim, and therefore he was poro Yibbun. He said that Yibbun should come first. He defended restoring and returning Yibbun for Sephardim when conditions permit. Right? And he said, now this is interesting, he said that those who give preference over Chalitzah, there could be an argument that there are not that many halachic sources backing them. That's very interesting, but that's what Rav Ovadia Yosef Alav Shalom says. Now, the opinion of Ben Ish Chai, as well as Rav Yitzchak Kaduri, he wasn't a posek, but he was a big mekubal. Also, they both hold of Yibbun to be the preference. However, Ben Ish Chai mentioned that he mentioned that there was a common practice even back in his time that people go for Chalitzah. That's interesting. Back in Baghdad, there were not all cases of Yibbun, there were Chalitzah also. We also see that Ben Ish Chai brings other halachot that are based on Ashkenazic sources, and that was in Baghdad. So we find that most contemporary Batei Din prefer Chalitzah over the Yibbun, right? And Harav Ovadia Yosef argued for Sephardim that classic preference should be Yibbun, right? Right, and just less than 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, in Iran, there was a practical case of Chalitzah that even the media had a coverage, right? And this was actually reported in Mishpacha magazine, right? The Chalitzah was done by a friend of mine that we both attended the same yeshiva Bnei Israel of Baltimore, right? Rabbi Yehuda Grami Shlita, that he is the chief rabbi of Iran, right? And it's interesting that they did the Chalitzah. Of course, they went to the whole sugya and they made sure that it was done correctly. So this was this became. I remember. I think even Matzab covered this, right?
What was the story?
Right. I don't know all the details, but there was a case of Chalitzah. They did Chalitzah. So in Iran, Chalitzah. Right. Huh?
Chalitzah's done all the time. So it's not-
Yeah, well, over here
So common.
in Iran,
For people to witness it.
witnesses and bedin and all that in Iran is more difficult than here to get this.
Heinemann in Baltimore used to like tell anybody, advertise it for people to.
Come, yeah, you also was in the Kailo when we were still in La Brea.
What's the din of the
So basically, one second. So basically, over here we see all these halachic decisions, and we see that the concept of Yibbun and Chalitzah is not something that the videos say I'm too old, forget about it. No, they have to follow the halachic authorities. Okay, go ahead.